example? Wow.
Pay attention. And we can pay attention.
20 minutes, right. Hi, my name is Trudy Christian of Women's Health Plus, and this month is Endometriosis Awareness Month. And so at Women's Health Plus, we have decided to focus a bit on endometriosis. It is a disease that women suffer from, 1 in 10 women actually, so it's not rare. And although it may be invisible, it is definitely not imaginary. So endometriosis is a very, very serious condition, and we want to spread some awareness about it. So today we have with us Mrs. Jeanette Raffoul, who is an endo warrior and who will be speaking to us about her own experience with endometriosis. The first thing I wanted to ask is, how did you find out you had endometriosis?
Well, my lung collapsed, and before that even happened, I always had bad periods.
Okay.
Bad periods. 20 cramps, 10 days, heavy bleeding, heavy flows, monthly, regularly, every time. I don't know what is a light day. So some women I would hear say they have a light day. By the third and the fourth day, I could not identify it. So eventually, I suffered from that for a while, and then my lung collapsed in 2015. Unknowing to us what it was. I didn't have any accidents, nobody hit me, I didn't fall, and then collapsed. And then the end result of that was because I had endometriosis.
Wow. So endometriosis is often thought of as a reproductive disorder because essentially the lining or the cells that line the uterus, cells that are similar to them, find themselves growing elsewhere. And typically people think, okay, well, it's reproductive, so it will only affect the reproductive organs. And here you have your scenario where your lungs,
my lung collapsed
twice. Were affected. Wow.
Yes, because it spread.
Okay.
So currently I had it in my lungs, I had 2 surgeries.
Okay.
So my lungs can keep me alive. I still have it on my diaphragm. And because of my diaphragm, obviously cannot operate there.
Okay.
I would die, so I would have it as well on my reproductive organs, which would cause infertility and just like that.
Okay.
So it was a very long, interesting journey to actually find out that I had this 5 years ago.
Wow. And did the doctors make the diagnosis easily when your lung collapsed? Was that something that they actually figured out quickly, or did it take a long time, or did it take a whole bunch of, back and forth?
Well, no. I want to say thanks to Dr. Mary. From day one, he stuck with me. When your lung collapsed, the first thought is that you had an accident. So something punctured or somebody hit you. I think about 20 times they must have asked me 20 different ways if my husband hits me.
Wow.
Because they could not figure out the reason why my lung collapsed. And then when they put the chest tube, blood came out. That was another surprise there because usually it should have been air.
Right.
So I really had a lot of things going on then, and nobody could figure out. I just wake up. I couldn't sleep the night before. I just woke up and I went to casualty, and then with an X-ray, my lung collapsed. And there was no reason. There was nothing to indicate why my lung collapsed. And then Dr. Mary, research, we did the research, and then we figured, I think that's what you have. But Dominican medicine is kind of limited to things. I had to go abroad to do the surgeries.
In your younger days, like during teenage days, when you first started menstruating, you mentioned like you never had light days, you always had heavy days. Did anybody ever suggest to you or bring up that maybe endometriosis is what is causing those heavy periods?
No.
Wow.
I mean, who was even thinking of endometriosis at that time? It was nothing like asthma, bronchitis that you hear ever so often. So in my younger days, my family have sickle cells and I suffer from sickle cell crisis. So they would kind of attribute my pain, discomfort towards that. So I really couldn't blame the doctors for their thinking pattern. But my parents never gave me a break. I had to leave school, I had to go to casualty, I had to go home. I missed 2 days of school, 3 days of school, swelling myself, heavy bleeding, kind of eating and vomiting and sick, I have pain, and I had that every month.
Wow.
Every month, without fail. So it's like you get accustomed to taking the pain meds, drinking the ginger tea, drinking peppermint tea, and
so it almost became something that you just figure you just have to live with and just deal with.
Right, because I mean I already have sickle cell trait in my family, I suffer from that. So it's like I adopted to the fact that when my period is coming, I expect the things. To the point where I go to casuals, I can tell the doctors what to give me. That's how much it became a part of my life. So I accepted a heavy period, I accepted painful periods, cramp, pain, not eating and vomiting, I accepted all of that. And the only thing that it will affect me later in my life was something else. So endometriosis was never a topic of discussion, a question, nothing.
And was it something you had even just heard of, like maybe just in passing on TV? Okay, so you heard it. Okay.
Yes. But you're not thinking, I have that.
Right.
You're not thinking of that. And at the time, I'm not trying to get pregnant. I'm not trying to have a child. I'm not trying to start a family. So those things didn't come into my mind. I just figured I was a bad colic. That's what it was. And I accepted that.
And would you ever like compare yourself to other women, maybe your friends or family, in terms of how your period manifested itself, the pain? Like, would you ever ask other people, like, you all experience that same thing, or did you just take it for granted that everybody maybe was experiencing the same kind of symptoms?
As if nobody, when they speak of the period, nobody had what I had. I was a lone ranger in my symptoms. So all my friends, by the fourth day, they were fine, fourth day, they were fine. It's like the heaviest day was the first day.
Okay.
I never like this. What is like this? I would ask.
It was unknown to you. What is a light day?
And they would switch from, their parts to liners. I'm like, what?
Yes.
I could not identify that.
And how there are different types of parts. Like, I mean, you have the heavy, the overnight ones, but so for you, it's like only heavy.
Heavy. Pampers. That's what I use.
Okay.
So I couldn't identify, I couldn't relate, I couldn't understand. Like asking them questions, and they would be like, what do you want like this? I'm like, what is that? And then they would last for 5 days, 7 days, and I'm like, man, that's for 10 days. So like I have a sister who didn't have those things. Right? So I could understand Daisy had no periods. But Daisy also had cramps.
Okay.
So so for me it was like some things were just new to me. I didn't understand some things.
Okay. And the symptoms that you experience all throughout your life after the incident with the lung collapse and then your surgeries thereafter, have you continued to experience those same symptoms, or was some form of treatment given to reduce the severe periods and those other symptoms of endometriosis?
I had the surgery 5 years ago. I only saw a change in my period maybe last year, 1.5 years. So I started to actually understand what my periods. Well, though I had the surgery in my lungs, something changed after the surgery, and like I would see 7 days. Prior to that, I knew my period was coming a week in advance, So I took my painkillers before the period came in anticipation of
Wow.
the pain. Right now, it's like my period come on the day. Yeah, I was mentioning to my husband, and you know, my period coming like, if you come on this Monday, I don't know, like 5 and 7 days before they come in. Yeah, because I would have the cramps 7 days before the period come, I have cramps. Right now, I don't have that.
Okay.
I could not drink any cold things before. So I'm only taking ginger tea and crackers only. I couldn't eat, my mother could not give me food. I would be vomiting.
And you mentioned you were nauseous and vomiting.
Now I can maybe drink a cold drink day 1 or day 2, which I could never do before. And even Dr. Mary was like, you can't drink coffee in the bread. I'm like, no. Because the cramps are just so intense, I had to get something warm. So I only noticed the change in the last year and a half or 2 years.
So that brings me now to the whole emotional aspect of the whole emotional side effects, if I would call it that, or symptoms of a disease like endometriosis. So we spoke about the physical, you know, the severe pain during periods, the nausea, the vomiting, and for you, the other organs that may be affected, like your lungs, right? But what about the emotional impact of endometriosis?
The emotional roller coaster.
Yes. What can you say about that? Because you mentioned infertility, and that in and of itself is a whole emotional blow.
It is.
Yes.
That's why it is highly recommended, guys, to really research, because you have to learn to accept certain things after you find out you have that.
Okay.
And nothing is not impossible. I believe in God. So for me, miracles can happen. Right? So one of the side effects or the symptoms of endometriosis is infertility. And that's what I found out.
Okay.
In addition to my lungs.
Okay.
Because after I got married, you know, after 1 2 years you start to start a family. Start a family. It just wasn't happening. It just wasn't happening. And you know, you do all of these steps. You go by the doctor, they give you the pills, you try that. You can do this scan by medicals, you try that. You do everything. I buy a tea, I buy a bush, I buy this. Because you know you're trying to start a family and something is not, it's just not happening.
Right.
And then when my lung collapsed and I found that I had that, I'm like, so that explains
what you're going through.
Yes. And I've always wanted to have a family.
Okay.
So you can imagine the emotional stress that I had in accepting that, hey, that might not happen because endometriosis, I have that. Okay. So that might, but it took me all this time to find out, and all of this time planning to have a family.
Right.
You know, from since I've ever known myself, I was only 4 children.
4. Okay.
And then you have to come to that
realization. I hope for one. I have PCOS, which also leads to it, which also can cause infertility or reduce fertility. And my hope, I mean, I am approaching the end of the time where that is possible. But my hope is for one, a whole one.
And I want 4.
But you want 4.
4 whole ones. 1 is not enough. 2 is too little. 3 is an odd number. 4 is 4. Right. So I had that dream, and then I got married, and I figured I already had a daughter, so I figured actually I want 4, and it's like already I want to do 3.
Okay.
So you know, you start planning. You know, and then
I guess visualizing.
Yes, you make the preparations. I mean, my husband and I did the things the correct way. We got married. We rented for a year, so we built our house. We made provisions for that, and then it just didn't happen. So you can imagine the whole roller coaster, and on top of it all, everybody has to ask, when you making the child? When you making the child? When you making the child?
Right.
You know, so you really go for that turmoil privately in yourself, and that's why I keep saying that it's good to be aware early, so you know, at least you know. And I know that 18, 19 years old, then you know you start to tell yourself that maybe that might not happen. So you accept the reality very early, as opposed to when you have done all of this preparation, then you just realize.
Now that you know, well, you have endometriosis, you know more about it, you have had this major experience with endometriosis, what would your advice be to young women who maybe experience all the same things you just spoke about, and just like you, maybe figure to themselves that's just their cross to bear, the heavy periods, the nausea, the vomiting during their cycle, and they don't know about endometriosis either. What would be your advice to young women in that same situation that you were in when you were younger?
Don't settle for painkillers.
Okay.
Because it was something that I settled for. Ask questions, and you have to know your body. My period should have engaged me to ask more questions. Doctor, why? Even if you had told me you ask yourselves, I should have still gone on to further investigate. But at that stage in your life, you take everything the doctor tells you. That's what it is, because you figure they know more, they know better, they will advise you properly. So my advice to women there is do research. Don't settle for things that you know to yourself is not right. When you hear other people saying 7 days for period, 5 days for period, 6 days, ask yourself, why am I having 11 days? Something is not right. That's not normal. That's not the norm. So you just start asking questions, do some research, and don't settle for just take ibuprofen, take cocodamol, or take menstruation medication. That doesn't get to the root of the problem. It's always an underlying problem that you don't know. So I would suggest that you just don't settle for pain meds and do research. Ask questions.
I like that advice because it's something that a lot of people don't do, ask questions. And you got it so correct when you said that a lot of people figure, well, the doctor knows best. So, they don't question the doctors or they don't question the medical professionals. But you are the only person living in your body. Right. So you are the only person that truly knows, what's going on, right? So I feel like that is just gold in terms of advice. I am very happy that you agreed, because you willing to come here and speak about endometriosis is something not many people would want to do, and it's something that is so important. So I'm happy that you actually agreed to do it, and we can spread some awareness about endometriosis. So it is March, it is the awareness month for endometriosis. So as much as possible, we want to just bring the word to women out there that this condition does exist. If you feel strange about what you're going through, what your body is going through, then as Jeanette said, you have to ask the questions. So that is it for us, March Endometriosis Awareness Month. We want to just continue making people aware about endometriosis. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
That is no problem. Thank you so much, and I definitely appreciate everything you said. Thank you.